until after the presentation. Thank you. Hello, everybody, again. Welcome to today's session of the 2026 Global Collaborative Series, Global Nurse Force, Bridging Health and Climate Action. My name is Asia Nyopane, and I'm the Director for the Office of Planetary Health and Global Engagement here at the Yale School of Nursing. This monthly event is made possible through the generous collaboration of our esteemed partner hosts, the staff and faculty team at the University of Michigan, led by Dr. Janae Marie Stacchiorini, Professor Associate Dean for Global Affairs and Director of the Pan American Health Organization of the WHO Collaborating Center at the University of Michigan School of Nursing, and Jennifer Chapin-Smith, also at University of Michigan School of Nursing. The team at Vanderbilt University is led by Dr. April Kapu, Professor and Associate Dean for Strategic Partnerships and Global Affairs, and Betsy Usher, Assistant Dean of Alumni Relations at Vanderbilt School of Nursing. So thank you to our partners again for your dedication and contributions to this initiative. Every month, we take turns hosting this important series, and we encourage everyone to stay engaged by registering for future sessions. The next one is on Wednesday, April 22, featuring a speaker organized by our colleagues at the University of Michigan. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Jennifer Rasmussen, for her presentation titled Widening the Circle of Care, Climate Change and Health Through a Holistic Nursing Lens. Jennifer is a registered nurse with over 13 years of experience in community health and home care. Since 2020, she has focused her work on planetary health through education, advocacy, and global engagement, serving as an environmental health nurse fellow with the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments, and currently as an education fellow with the Planetary Health Alliance. She has lobbied for improved air quality standards on Capitol Hill, written about eco-anxiety and environmental justice for respected publications, and presented at national and international conferences. Jennifer holds degrees from Bates College, Simmons University, and UMass Amherst, along with certificates in Mind, Body, Spirit Nursing from MGH Institute of Health Professions and Climate Change and Health from Yale. This fall, she'll begin a PhD in anthropology at UMass Amherst. Congratulations, Jennifer. Studying planetary health through a social science lens with a focus on human-nature connection, care, and more than human well-being. This is really exciting. Please join me in welcoming Jennifer as she shares her expertise and work on climate change and health through a holistic lens. Over to you, Jennifer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Asia. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides. Okay, can everyone see my screen okay? Great, thank you. All right. Perfect. Well, let me just see here. I'm just going to move the screen up a little bit. Perfect. All right. Yes. Good morning, everyone, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you again, Asia, for introducing me and for having me as part of this really wonderful global collaborative series. I'm just so delighted to be here with you all today. And before we begin, I'd like to invite you just into a short, maybe 1 to 2 minute grounding meditation. I thought might be a nice way to settle in before our talk today. You're welcome to close your eyes or just simply soften your gaze, however you're most comfortable. All right, and so settling in, find your feet on the floor. Feel the weight of your body in your chair. And take a breath. And notice that you are breathing. Notice that this breath is air that has moved through forests and over oceans. The air is not yours alone, it has always been shared. And take another breath. And as you exhale, let your shoulders drop a little. Let whatever you carried in with you today begin to settle. And now bring your attention to your hands. notice them for a moment and all that they do, all that they carry, and just notice. And now let your attention expand a little beyond this room to the building around you, and then beyond it to whatever sky is outside, to the trees, if there are any, and to the ground beneath all of us. Just sitting right now on the earth. We are not separate from it. We are part of it, breathing its air and drinking its water, and made of its matter. And take one more breath. And as you come back to the room, see if you can bring just a little of that awareness with you. That sense of being held, of being connected. And now, when you're ready, gently bring your attention back to the room. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope that was a good transition into our chat today. And to start with the learning objectives, I'll just go over these briefly. By the end of this presentation, my hope is that you'll be able to first describe how holistic nursing principles, including mind, body, spirit, and interconnectedness, equip nurses to understand and respond to the health impacts of climate change. The second is to identify how planetary health and holistic nursing practice can expand nurses' capacity to address climate and health challenges across individual, community, and ecosystem levels. And third is to identify at least 2 actions through which nurses can advance planet-conscious care that supports the interconnected health of people and the natural world. And each of these objectives connects to one or more of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. I know some or probably all of you are familiar with the SDGs, but in case there is anyone who isn't, the SDGs are a set of 17 interconnected global goals adopted by the United Nations member states in 2015, so just over 10 years ago. It's really meant to be a blueprint to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure peace and prosperity for all by 2030. So in today's talk, we're specifically drawing on 4 of them. SDG 3, which aims to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. SDG 4, which aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. SDG 13, which calls for urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. And SDG 15, which aims to protect and restore terrestrial ecosystems and halt biodiversity loss. And I think what's worth noting about these 4 goals, and all 17 of them actually, is that they're truly inseparable. You cannot address one without touching on the others. And that'll be a common theme that we talk about today. So, holistic nursing, let's start with the definition. The American Holistic Nurses Association defines holistic nursing as all nursing practice that has healing the whole person as its goal. Holistic nurses focus on nurturing wholeness and peace and healing by valuing each person's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and environmental strengths and challenges. And by honoring each person's values, health beliefs, and their health experience. The whole person is taken into account at each stage. So, from the assessment to the diagnosis, the planning, the intervention, and the evaluation. And the American Holistic Nurses Association reminds us that holistic nursing is not merely something we do. It's not a certificate. I mean, you can get a certificate in it, but it's not about having that certificate or checking a box, but it's more an attitude and a philosophy, a philosophy of care. And when we integrate self-care and self-responsibility, spirituality in whatever way that is meaningful for you, and reflection into our lives, it deepens our awareness of how connected we are, to our patients, to each other, to our communities, and to the natural world around us. And I did want to mention too that, and what is the difference between nursing and then holistic nursing? And where maybe traditional nursing is primarily focused on the physical, treating, diagnosing, managing disease. And holistic nursing builds on that foundation, expanding the frame into including the mind, the spirit, the environment, relationships, the whole context of a person's life. And it also recognizes that the nurse's own well-being matters as well, that you cannot fully care for others without caring for yourself. And in practice, it can look similar. The difference is often in how you see, what questions you ask, and what you make space for. And honestly, many nurses practice holistically without even really calling it that. This framework it just kind of gives language to something that a lot of us already feel. Um, and at the heart of that feeling is something, worth naming, and a sense, it's a sense that everything is interconnected. And that sense of interconnectedness runs through nursing as a whole, and not just holistic nursing. It's part of how we're trained to see people, families, communities. And it matters right now because the health of people and the health of the planet are increasingly the same conversation. What is newer is that the research is catching up. There was a 2024 paper in Nursing Outlook, introduced the concept of planetary empathy, the idea that human health is truly inseparable from ecological health, and that healthcare professionals need to expand their circle of empathy outward to the planet itself. There was also a 2025 paper on interconnected environmental ethics, which put it simply, a healthy planet is the foundation for healthy people. So very similar messages, but it just supports that systems are interconnected. Health is relational. We cannot fully understand human health without understanding the health of the systems that sustain human life. And it helps to think about this visually as like an expanding circle of care. So something a little like this. We begin at the center, the individual, the whole person, mind, body, spirit. Then the circle widens to the family, the relationships that shape who our patients are and how they heal. Then to the community, the social world, our neighborhoods, cultural context, the conditions that make health possible or impossible. And then wider still to the ecosystem, the living world, the air, the water, the land, the climate. And then finally to the planet itself, the whole living system of which we are all a part. Holistic nursing has long understood that the circle of care is wide, and there is a whole field built around this very idea as well, and it's called planetary health. Um, I wanted to ask if anyone's heard planetary health. I actually can't see anyone, so I'll skip that question, but I will define it. I did see a thumbs up. Thank you. Planetary health, for those of you who aren't familiar, um, as defined by the Planetary Health Alliance, so this is Planetary Health Alliance's definition, is a solutions-oriented, transdisciplinary field and social movement focused on analyzing and addressing the impacts of destabilized natural systems on human health and all life on Earth. So I'll break that down in a minute. And this definition emerged from the Rockefeller Foundation Lancet Commission on Planetary Health back in 2015, so over 10 years ago. It was a collaboration bringing together the experts from public health, environmental science, economics, and policy. Um, and to break down the definition a little bit, a few things worth noting. It is solutions oriented. So it's not just describing a problem, it's pointing towards action. It's also transdisciplinary. It recognizes that no single field can solve these challenges alone. And we also see planetary health as a social movement. Given the magnitude of the challenges we face, it's essential to engage hearts and minds to drive meaningful action. And planetary health examines the many ways human activities disrupt Earth's natural systems and how these disruptions impact human health and all life on Earth. So, at its core, planetary health is about the interdependence between human civilization and the natural systems on which it depends. I myself hadn't heard the term until about 2020, right around the start of the pandemic. I forget what I Googled, but it just kind of led me to the Planetary Health Alliance webpage, and I saw an advertisement for a meeting with clinicians for planetary health, or C4PH. It was a subgroup of the Planetary Health Alliance, um, and attending that meeting, and similar to holistic nursing, their mission was it really resonated with me, um, it's just been a growing field since its inception in 2015, and it's really gaining traction all over the world, which is exciting. And what happens when planetary health is not just a lens we apply, right, but a way we actually see the world? The Nova Institute for Health describes planetary consciousness as a deeper, more integrated awareness of our place within a living, interdependent planetary system. So, not just an intellectual understanding, but a recognition that how we see ourselves in relation to each other and to the earth shapes everything, our values, our choices, and the very crises we now face. The Earthrise community, which is a global initiative growing out of the Planetary Health Alliance, further describes planetary consciousness as a shift in how we see ourselves. So it's a recognition of our shared home and an acknowledgement that many of our greatest global challenges arise not just from policy failures or technological gaps, but from a deeper disconnection from ourselves, from each other, and from the natural world around us. And holistic nursing understands this. The integration of self-care and spiritual reflection that American Holistic Nursing Association describes. The awareness that healing happens in relationship with the patient, with the community, and with the living world. The understanding that we cannot separate our own well-being from the well-being of what surrounds us. Planetary consciousness is not a new demand placed on nurses, but it's a deepening of something we already know to be true. And with that as our lens, I want to take a look at what the planet's actually telling us right now and what it means for the patients we care for. So climate change is one of the most defining health challenges of our time. I'm sure you've all heard that before. And what makes it so urgent for holistic nurses is that it does not only affect the body, it affects the mind, it affects the spirit. It's a whole person crisis, and therefore really demands a whole person response. So we'll walk through each sort of dimension, starting with the body. At the body level, the climate change impacts are ones that many of you are probably already seeing. Extreme heat events are increasing in frequency and severity. Heat illness, worsening cardiovascular and renal disease. Heat-related mortality fall hardest on the elderly, the very young, and those with chronic conditions. Degraded air quality from wildlife smoke and pollution is worsening asthma and COPD, particularly in children. Vector-borne diseases like Lyme are expanding their geographic range as temperatures shift. And I can speak to this personally. Just pulled a tick off my dog this morning. Like some of you, I'm on the East Coast and we have ticks everywhere here. And I see them even in the middle of winter sometimes in recent years. I've seen it's been a real uptick. Oh God, uptick. Sorry, no pun intended. But a real rise in tick-borne illness in my patients, especially in the summer. But again, we're seeing it year round now. Um, and then there's emerging infectious disease. Vibrio is a striking example. Last summer, a swimmer near my home contracted Vibrio, which can cause necrotizing fasciitis, commonly also referred to as a flesh-eating disease. And in vulnerable patients, mortality rates can exceed 50%. Historically, Vibrio was associated with the Gulf Coast down south and of the United States, the eastern United States. And the research is now clear that it's moving north, shifting at roughly 48 kilometers per year as ocean temperatures rise. And it's showing up in local waters. I remember reading about that swimmer in the local paper, and then a few weeks later, I get a new assignment for a new patient, and he ended up being my patient. And I got to hear his story firsthand, and it was just a miracle that he survived. But it was such a stark reminder for me how close to home, you know, climate change is affecting just all of us. And then moving on, additionally, food and water insecurity are growing as agricultural systems are disrupted, shifting growing seasons, more frequent drought and extreme weather events. They're straining food supplies in ways that are already affecting nutritional health and increasing vulnerability to chronic disease. And then finally, displacement from floods, wildfires, and sea level rise is creating a growing category of climate-related physical trauma. And climate change is also a mental health crisis. Eco-anxiety, some of you may be familiar with the term. It's a chronic fear about environmental threats and the future of the planet. It's now recognized in clinical and psychological literature. It is a real, measurable, and showing up especially in younger populations. There was a 2025 study in the International Journal of Social Psychiatry. It surveyed about 1,800 adults across generational cohorts and found that Gen Z reported the highest levels of eco-anxiety, with nearly half of participants aged 18 to 28 exhibiting high levels of this eco-anxiety. And then there's climate grief. That's a distinct form of grief from other forms of grief. It's like an anticipatory, often collective, and frequently without a clear endpoint. Depression and post-traumatic stress following climate disasters are well documented. And then there's something emerging among healthcare workers themselves. It's kind of a form of moral injury that comes from caring for patients within systems that contribute to the very crisis causing their suffering. And these are clinical realities. And the holistic nursing principles prepare us for this. And developing our own sort of planetary consciousness deepens it because we cannot hold space for what we have not first sat with ourselves. And then finally, the spiritual layer. There's a term, I always have to say it slowly, solastalgia. This was coined by a philosopher, Glenn Albrecht, and it describes the distress caused by environmental change in one's home environment, the grief of watching a beloved landscape change, or degrade or disappear altogether. It's a kind of place-based grief. And beyond solastalgia, there is a broader existential weight that comes with living in a time of planetary uncertainty, a disruption of the sense that the world is stable, that the future is coherent, that life has continuity and meaning. And these are truly spiritual wounds. And they are, I think, also invitations toward a deeper planetary consciousness, toward a deeper examination of our own relationship to the living world. And holistic nursing has always had language for spiritual suffering and spiritual growth. And this is a moment to use both. Um, and with all that in mind, how climate change impacts the body, the mind, the spirit. Let's turn now to what healing looks like at every level of this circle. So, at the individual level, the work is to widen what we notice and what we hold space for. Recognize and name climate-related health impacts at every level, physical, mental, spiritual. Create space for eco-anxiety and climate grief as real clinical experiences. So validating solastalgia, ask about the environment a patient lives in, not just the home, but the neighborhood, the air quality, the heat exposure, the access to nature. And where possible, integrate nature-based therapies. The evidence is growing. There's a 2024 systemic review meta-analysis in Frontiers in Public Health that found that nature-based interventions effectively complement traditional therapies and improve mental health outcomes. So it showed from reduced anxiety and depression to even a greater life satisfaction. Time in nature, green space, connection to living systems. It's exciting. I think we all feel that. I hope it's safe to say we all kind of feel good when we're out in nature, for the most part. And it's exciting that the evidence is now supporting that. And because it just further proves these interventions belong in our practice. And then at the community level, the core insight is this: collective grief needs collective care. Communities affected by climate disasters, by chronic environmental stress, or by the slow erosion of a familiar world need spaces where their experience can be witnessed and not just treated. The research on disaster recovery is clear. Communities with a strong relational bonds recover better. Um, and again, there was a 2024 review in a journal of planning literature found that the most influential factors in disaster recovery are social capital, sense of community, social participation, and place attachment. Social cohesion is another health intervention. Holistic nursing, um, it understands the importance of relationship, of ritual, and shared meaning in health and healing. Those are exactly the capacities communities need right now. And communities that feel connected to each other and the living world around them are more resilient. That, and the research is supporting this. And I did want to note this photo to the left here, that is from an event hosted in Boston by the Fairmount CDC Collaborative, um, which is a great local community-based organization. And it was a five-part series called Creating Resilience, Art Therapy Workshops for Mental Health in a Changing Climate. And it just sounded so great. I had to use it for this photo. Community members came together. It was really well attended, and they came together through art, creativity, and conversation to process anxiety and build collective healing. So again, that collective grief becoming collective care. And I just think that was such a great example of community healing. And at the outermost level of the circle, you know, something important starts to become visible is that healing the person and healing the planet are not competing priorities. They are part of the same problem and part of the same solution. The growing body of evidence on nature therapy, um, on the health benefits of green space, on what happens to people when they are connected to living systems, it tells us that human health and ecosystem health are deeply intertwined. There was a 2025 umbrella review in Frontiers in Public Health. It looked at sort of synthesized decades of epidemiological meta-analyses, found that green and blue spaces are linked to reduced risk of type 2 diabetes, obesity, and cardiovascular disease, as well as improved mental health. So this really confirmed that access to nature is not just a luxury, but a public health intervention. And protecting natural spaces is indeed a public health intervention. And the reverse is also true. You know, when we support human communities and healing and resilience, we create the conditions for people to care for the world around them. And so, what can we actually do with all of this? And this is probably the most important thing I want to say. And, you know, I mean it practically, not just theoretically, but, you know, this is not about adding something new to what feels like an already impossible workload as a nurse or healthcare professional. Nurses are already so stretched, and, you know, I just feel that so deeply. I would never want to seem like I'm putting more weight or responsibility on anyone, but more that this is about recognition, recognizing what is already there, already in how we're trained to see, already in how many of us practice. And planetary consciousness is not another weight. It's just a wider lens. And as holistic nurses, that lens is already familiar. And so let's look at sort of what that actually looks like in the clinical setting. So in your clinical practice, this might look like asking different questions. What are the environmental conditions where your patient lives? Do they have access to green space, clean air, cooling in summer? Is there anxiety that has an ecological dimension, fear of the future, grief about what is changing? Is there a loss of place that might be solastalgia, even if they have never heard the word? Um, you can screen for eco-anxiety and climate grief. You know, these are, again, real clinical presentations, and naming them matters enormously to patients who may have felt maybe dismissed in the past. You can integrate nature-based therapies where possible and validate solastalgia as a real legitimate form of loss. Um, and nature-based therapies don't have to just mean a walk in the woods. They can be brought to people at the bedside. This photo here of this woman to the right, this was taken in a skilled nursing facility. She was doing indoor gardening through an organization called Elder Grow. It's a US-based company that brings the therapeutic power of gardening into senior living communities, which I just loved this when I first heard about this company. They really get their hands in the dirt, they plant seeds, they can see the progress of the plants that they're growing. They have purpose, they're contributing, and it's the soil, it's the seeds, it's the something living and growing. And an elderly patient, they may have lost their garden and their yard and their connection to the land, and so it might just not be a hobby for them. It might be a form of healing for them. And then beyond the clinical encounter, the circle of action widens. So in patient education, helping patients to understand the connections between their health and their environment, accessibility, um, honestly, without harm, in community, showing up for local resilience efforts, listening to the communities most affected, bring nursing's perspective into those conversations. In your institutions, you can advocate for sustainable healthcare practices. Healthcare itself is a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions, and nurses have real influence there. In policy, add your voice. Nursing is the most trusted professional in the world, and that trust is real influence. And then finally, tend to your own connection to the natural world. Spend time in nature. Notice what moves you. Your planetary consciousness, again, is not separate from your practice. It's the foundation of it. I did want to point out these two pictures on the left here. The top is of the nurses from the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments at an advocacy event in DC. The Alliance, also known as Annie, is an organization that advocates and educates on environmental health issues, has hundreds of members. They're tackling all kinds of environmental health issues around the country. There's a policy subgroup, there's education subgroup, and they just do really wonderful work. And if anyone's interested in environmental health, I definitely encourage you to check them out and join them. It's just a really wonderful group of people. And then the bottom photo is from a couple years ago, and it's a few of us, health professionals. We went to speak with our representatives, our state representatives, after attending the Our Planet, Our Health conference, advocating for environmental health policies we care about. And I share this not to like hold myself up as an example, but because I wanted you to see that this kind of advocacy is accessible. And nurses, they really do belong in these conversations. So, in closing, I wanted to close by coming back to where we started, that holistic nursing, has always known that you cannot separate the person from the world they live in. That mind, body, spirit in relationship with everything around them. That has always been the premise. And what climate change is asking of us now is simply to take that premise all the way, to follow it out to the community, to the ecosystem, to the planet itself. And that is what planetary consciousness feels like from the inside. It's not necessarily a new idea, and it's not like another thing to learn or to carry, but hopefully it feels like a deepening of something that we have always sensed to be true, but maybe haven't had the language for it. And what holistic nursing has always asked of us is to see the whole person, to honor the connections, And that's exactly what this moment is asking of us, just wider. And what that circle of care, it really has always been this wide. And we're just sort of, as we continue to evolve and these earth crises are happening around us, we're learning to live inside all of it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Um, I just wanted to comment. I'm going to put two links on the chat because you reminded me. I was reading about in Finland, they've just started this new policy about um, time in green spaces. It's not just about being close to green spaces, but actually spending time is linked directly to less prescription drug use and a lot of other benefits. So I thought that might be interesting if folks wanted to take a look at that, and also if you wanted to take a look at that.
Thank you. Yeah, and actually reminding me, I'll put in the chat. I mentioned several studies, and so I thought, oh, I
Mm.
should put them all at the end to I'll paste them, all the studies I mentioned. I'll put them in the chat right now as like a list. So if anyone's interested in reading them, I'll put them in right now.
Well, thank you. And now I just want to open it up for any questions for Jennifer. Please raise your hand or